Wouldn't you say there's a pretty wide consensus that it was Parmar behind this and, this was part of the Khalistani extremist movement that brought this plane down?
But even though in Canada, don't you think it's unfair to a person who has never been charged, never been put to stand, never been questioned, never been cross-examined? Entire Canada is trying to close this file under his name.
In 1985, the single biggest act of terrorism to at least begin on Canadian soil was the bombing of Air India Flight 182 that departed from Vancouver. 329 people lost their lives on that flight. Now, the mastermind behind the bombing is a Khalistani extremist by the name of Talwinder Singh Parmar, but not everybody buys that. Just like 9/11, there are conspiracy theories, and even though the real memorial is to take place tomorrow on the actual anniversary of the bombing, here today a group has gathered at the Air India Memorial in Toronto to pay their respects, but it's with a bit of a weird twist. The people here aren't buying the official explanation and the official reasons. It's almost as though 9/11 deniers are showing up on September 10th at the 9/11 Memorial to give their showing of respect. We're going to try to talk to some of the organizers here and find out what they have to say about Flight 182 all these decades later. I'm just trying to understand the official memorial services are tomorrow.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of this service here today, sir?
Well, it's the same purpose purpose for tomorrow's service. We only try to avoid to upset anybody, because that's not the purpose of this memorial, to upset anybody. So we have done it a little differently, so they could, if they accept us, we will join them as of next year.
And I mean, is there some dissension between various factions that you wouldn't be part of the main memorial?
That's not what it is. It's been a very negative press for the last 32 years. And obviously, in the absence of the inquiry, a lot of finger pointing has been done. And we didn't want it to get involved in any mudslinging. So therefore, we wanted to register that we too mourn the loss of life.
Just so I understand, do you have a alternative theory of who was behind the Air India bombing? I mean, it's been said the mastermind was Talwinder Parmar. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know who the mastermind is. Talwinder Parmar was never put through the trial. He was never cross-examined. I don't want to join anybody who would say that. Our Justice John Major's inquiry was very limited. The mandate was very narrow. So therefore, I would like to see inquiry from A to Z to find out where all this idea conspired and who helped who and who did who. And obviously, it's not one man job. If it's more than one man job, then who is? Because no one in Canada has been convicted.
But do you think there is some sort of a conspiracy? I mean, there's one theory is that the government of India was actually behind the bombing. Is that something that you're putting forth here?
But if I believe the journalist from Globe and Mail and Toronto Star, that is the theory. But I guess the government has not paid any attention to that theory that was published in the book, Soft Target. So I don't want to promote any theory, but what I wanted to do is, why we afraid to have a commission so we could find out exactly what happened.
But I mean, it seems like a preposterous theory, though. I mean, the idea that the government of India would kill its own citizens in a commercial aircraft. I mean, what would be the motive for that?
Well, who would politically benefit from it, and who's been politically suffering from it? I mean, that's one thing would give you that idea that who could do it. I mean, who would this kind of tragedy serve the purpose to? I mean, there are families who suffered a lot from this tragedy, and were somebody who did it was thinking about them, or they were thinking about their motive.
Do you reject the theory that this was perpetrated by those who were Khalistani extremists?
Well, I'm Khalistani and I'm not an extremist, and I believe in lobbying, and that's exactly what I do. And I know thousands of Khalistanis in Canada who would do the same thing, who sit beside the government and many other Canadian issues. So the notion of being a extremist Khalistani would do that. I don't think this would ever serve the purpose of a Khalistan movement at all.
But doesn't the evidence point towards that? I mean, given the political climate at the time in India and what happened later with the assassination of Indira Gandhi?
Well, we actually never in Canada try to find out what happened. So until we do that, perceptions are perceptions. Perception often are wrong. Anytime there's a tragedy, 9/11 happened. Government of America never rested until they find the perpetrator and punish them. Why the government of Canada playing politics with it? Until 2007, they didn't even own this tragedy. They didn't even think it was a Canadian tragedy. We, as a Canadian Sikhs, are suffering as stigmatized from them. You could see, I want to mourn, and families are upset why I'm doing this. So, you got to understand behind the scene, there's some sort of notion promoting there was the Sikhs who did it, or Sikhs who promote Khalistan did it. No, Sikhs who promote Khalistan are peace-loving Sikhs, and we are the one of those.
Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier, though, there was an inquiry in Canada, John Major, but you were saying it was too limited in its scope.
Well, Justice John Major's inquiry was that what lapsed in our security, that this kind of incident gone through our aviation securities. So the purpose of the inquiry was to find out where we need to plug in our security. It wasn't to find out who conspired it, who did it, why there are so many questions unanswered even today.
But wouldn't you say there's a pretty wide consensus that it was Parmar behind this and, this was part of the Khalistani extremist movement that brought this plane down?
But even though in Canada, don't you think it's unfair to a person who has never been charged, never been put to stand, never been questioned, never been cross-examined? Entire Canada is trying to close this file under his name. If he is the one, then find out. Do the inquiry, find out, and then we will all understand if it was him. I mean, just saying it, where two journalists from Toronto Star and Global Mail are giving a different narrative of the entire. Who do we believe? An investigative journalist or politicians or someone I don't even know who?
But you know what, you mentioned 9/11, and of course there's all kinds of conspiracy theories about 9/11 as well. And I mean, some people are saying that this is, insensitive, maybe even disrespectful, that there'd be a gathering before the official memorial for Air India. It'd be like the 9/11 truthers going on September 10th to have their memorial at the 9/11 memorial. What would you say to that?
Well, I don't think so. I take it very positively. I think we came out very wholeheartedly. Our sole purpose was to register that we too mourn the loss of lives.
And just so our viewers at home understand, the whole Khalistani movement, that is for a Sikh independent homeland in India. Is that correct?
Sikh homeland in Punjab.
And how active is that movement now?
Well, it's an international movement and it's everywhere. I think the Sikhs had ruled before that part of the world, and in 1947, when the British left that part of the world, they decided to hand over our piece of land to India. So now we think that partnership is no longer working. So therefore, they're asking for independence.
Sir, where do you stand on this? I mean, there seems to be this fringe out there that subscribes to some kind of conspiracy theory about the Air India bombing. Like I said, we were here just 24 hours ago to see a separate remembrance ceremony by people, some of whom identified as pro-Khalistani. What do you make of this?
It could be a political thing, people can twist it either way for their own advantage. So I'm not a guy who can investigate and go through and finalize or decide. For me, the life been lost. It was a terror attack for sure. Canadians lost their life, and that's the last thing we want to see further as we go.
Do you think it was somewhat disrespectful of people to come here yesterday to have their separate remembrance ceremony and sort of, insinuate that the real truth is not out there and, more or less hijack the remembrance of the Air India 182 victims?
Of course, this is hijack because these names are here. Those are all innocent people, right? So they just want to hide this crime.
In my opinion, I see it as the same sort of thing where these Khalistani Sikhs, they basically blame other people or like the Indian government or this or that, Indian intelligence. And the purpose is, well, I mean, to deflect attention away from who really perpetrated this horrible atrocities.
Politicians here have to understand this, that they have to keep Canada safe, united, a country for everyone where they feel comfortable, they feel safe, they can raise their families, and other politics of any other place, they should not bring it here.